Welcome back, everybody, to Just Read It. And this week we are jumping into chapters 56 through 60. So this is our second to last episode for book 2, A Court of Mist and Fury. Super excited to jump in so that we can get just a little bit closer to the end, because we're all excited to move on to the next books as well. So please join us for the romance, the drama, the trauma, and the wingspan discussions, because we can't go an episode without mentioning them. If you haven't read it already, go ahead and read the book, but let's jump into it. Okay, so Rhysand and Feyre are getting back from their first little night of being mated. They winnow directly back to the Illyrian camp, saying that he can use his magic. They can take that risk because now they're surrounded by 10,000 Illyrian warriors on various peaks. So the chances of Hybern getting to them there are pretty slim. I think this part is hilarious. And I love that we see this little snippet of Cassian because I think we're starting to put together his personality and how he is the general, but he is also like he picks up on a lot. He knows what he needs to do for those who are working with him, working under him as the general. And I think he does a really great job of helping those he's working with, whether he's training with them or whatnot, to help them overcome whatever it is mentally that they're dealing with. So I love that this part, he kind of helps Rhysand get some of that angst out because he and Feyre just spent like 24 hours pretty much just enjoying themselves and their mate bond. And ideally, it would take, like Rhys told us in the last episode, it would take a Fae male a couple of weeks with his new mated female before he was able to go in public without the possibility of violence or becoming volatile. Rhysand does not get that option because they have things that they have to do to help prepare for the war that's coming or trying to stop it before it happens. So they winnow back into the Illyrian camp, and Cassian turns the Stark on immediately. Like, doesn't even say hi. It's just immediate. Well, it's about time. And Rhys snarls. A savage, wild snarl that ripped out of Rhys was like nothing I'd heard, and I gripped his arm as he whirled on Cassian. Cassian looked at him and laughs because Cassian knows. He knows what's going on. He knows what needs to be done. But the Illyrian warriors in the camp began shooting into the sky, hauling women and children with them. They're like, oh no, we're getting out of here. We know what's coming. We are flying the coop. And Cassian asks, while he's tying his hair up, because he knows what's coming, hard ride, Rhysand? Rhys goes from snarling to absolute quiet. Feyre mentions it is a preternatural quiet now leaked from Rhys, where the snarl had erupted a moment before, and she turns to Cassian and says, when he bashes your teeth in, don't come crying to me. And Cassian's response is just to keep taunting Rhysand and says, mating bond chafing a bit, Rhys? And then he goes so far as to say, Fairy doesn't look too tired. Maybe she could give me a ride. And he gets cut off because at that point, Rhys explodes. Anger, wings, muscles, teeth snapping, they're rolling through the mud, fists flying, like they're just full on brawling at this point because Cassian had known exactly what he was saying, what he was doing. And I realized as he kicked Rhys off of him, Rhys didn't touch the power, his power. He is only fighting with his physical body. He'd seen the edge in Rhys's eyes and known he had to dull it before we could go any further. And I love it because none of the Illyrians dared land for like an hour or two that Rhys and Cassian brawl. And Feyre kind of thinks at this point if the average male needed a week to adjust, what was required of Rhysand because his power is so incredible, so much higher above everybody. Would it be a month, 2, maybe even a year? Will he ever adjust to it? Who knows? And I love that Feyre mentions that she'd seen Rhys fight before, that it was controlled and elegant, and she'd seen him mad. But at this point, he is feral, and she's never seen that before. And I love it because then Feyre walks into the house, and Moira's like, well, they'll be at this for a while, so welcome to the family, Feyre. This is what it's like. And Feyre thinks, I thought those might have been the most beautiful words I'd ever heard. Because she has a family, but she never felt like they actually acted like a family because they didn't support each other through the years that they didn't have anything. but now Feyre has a group of people around her that act like a family, not just in how they pick on each other and make fun of each other, but also in the sense that they care for each other so much that they will do everything that they have to or everything in their power to help each other out. So Cassian and Rhys spent an hour pummeling each other into exhaustion, and then they trudged into the house bloody and filthy. One look at her mate, and all it took was for her to crave the smell and feel of him again. So Cassian and Mor leave so that they can have their time together because they're still not quite used to that pull to each other. And then when they're done, they winnow back to Valaris, back to home. And then Rhys actually winnows them directly to the House of Wind, where they find Mor, Azriel, Amren, and Cassian already seated, waiting for us. As one they stood, as one they looked at me, and as one they bowed. And then Amren says, "We will serve and protect." And Rhys hadn't told her that this was going to happen because the word should come from the heart. And so she says, "Thank you, but I'd rather we were friends before the serving and the protecting." And Mor's like, "Well, we are, but we will still serve and protect because you are the mate of our High Lord." And Rhys says, "Now that that's settled, can we eat, please? Because I'm famished." And Amren goes to say something. And Rhys says, "Do not say what you're going to say, Amren, unless you want to have it out on the roof." So Amren then changes her mind from what she's going to say and turns to Feyre and says, "I heard you grew wings in the forest and killed some hybrid beasts. Good for you." Which I love because I don't feel like Feyre is used to getting praise for anything. And now Amren, who is kind of the most aloof person out of all of their group, is praising her for what she's done. But I also think it's kind of a thank you from Amren because Feyre also saved her High Lord. And we got Amren talking about how blessed, how lucky they are to have Rhys as a High Lord because of all the High Lords that Amren's known. So I feel like this is also a little bit of a thank you to Feyre for saving his life. So Mor, of course, responds with, "She saved his sorry butt is more like it. Poor little Rhys got himself in a bind." And Feyre says he does need unusual amounts of coddling, which cracks me up because this is where they're a family and they can joke with each other and tease each other. Azriel, of course, chokes on his wine because he's a little surprised at Feyre's response, and it's funny. But what's interesting when she looks at Azriel, Rhys tenses because it's his mate who's looking at another male, and she quickly looks away because she knows that the mate bond is chafing. It's the best way to put it. Thank you, Cassian. And then a glance from Rhys, and his eyes show the guilt that he feels for having that reaction, but it is still a primal reaction. He can't necessarily get over it. At least not yet. They have their little dinner for the first time as Feyre mated to Rhysand. And that evening after dinner, they go to the mortal realms to stay with her sisters because the queens are coming the following day. It ends up only being the eldest and the golden-haired queens that came. And I think it's interesting. I can't remember if we talked about it the first time we saw the queens, but I thought about it this time that I was reading through. We don't get the names of any of the queens. Not a single one. We get the description from Feyre's point of view, but we don't get any of their names. And it makes me wonder why. I know later on we're going to get at least one name, two. We're going to get two names, one in this book and then one in Nesda's book, but we don't get any of them, which surprises me. But I don't know. We'll see. It is only those two queens that have come with just as many guards. They do winnow in again, but this time Feyre and Rhys, they're wearing the same clothes, same outfits, but they are standing hand in hand, unflinching, a song without end or beginning. And both queens kind of notice this, take it in. Rhys, of course, thanks them for coming. And one of the queens, the ancient one, mentions that they were so gravely insulted last time by Nesda because of Nesda's words that they're surprised Nesda is allowed to be in the room. And I love Feyre's response of how Nesda looks at the queen. My sister leveled a look of pure, unyielding flame right back at her. So we were already seeing the flame in Nesda as far as how Feyre describes her. And the ancient queen goes on to say, "We debated for many days whether or not we should return. As you can see, the three of us found the insult to be unforgivable," which is ridiculous. It's just that's their excuse to not come. And Feyre knows it. In her head, she's thinking she's a liar to blame this on Nesda and sow discord between us because Nesda was trying to defend herself and the people south of the wall on this little section of Prithian. And then the golden-haired one, the younger one, turns to Feyre. And Feyre describes her as a lion incarnate. She purred to me, so he won your heart after all, Cursebreaker. And she says, I do not think that it was mere coincidence that the cauldron let us find each other on the eve of war returning between our two people. So again, we have mentions of how things are being worded. Feyre is saying our two people because she's thinking her as a human and Rhys as a fae. Whereas the queen's automatic response is the cauldron question mark and two peoples question mark, because she thinks of Feyre is now high fae. Therefore, it is no longer our, it is your people are the high fae, my people are the humans. You're not human anymore. So she's doing the same thing that Nesda did, but we see the specific wording done to set them apart from each other. And the Golden Queen says, our people do not invoke a cauldron. Our people do not have magic. And the way I see it, there is your people and ours. And I think this part is very interesting. And I don't think I picked up on it until this reread, because she goes to say, you are little better than the children of the blessed. What does happen to them when they come above the wall? And she looks at Rhys, Cassian, and Asriel and asks, are they prey, or are they used and discarded and left to grow old and infirm while you remain forever young? Such a pity. So unfair that you, Cursebreaker, received what all those fools no doubt begged for. Immortality, eternal youth. And I never picked up on this before, but she is giving them a huge clue as to what is going to happen in the next couple of chapters. Like, this is crazy foreshadowing right here, because she is literally saying, why did you get to be changed, reborn, and turned into an immortal, whereas so many others haven't been given that opportunity? So it leads me to believe that this queen knows that they have made a bargain with the King of Hybern to go into the cauldron and become immortal, and she is trying to hint at it in this discussion. She's going about it in a way that Rhysand would go about it, if we're being honest. He's done the exact same thing. He's thrown out hints of stuff that's happening or going on, but he's done it in a way that it sounds like he's still the evil bad guy when he really isn't. And so she's making a point to call this out while kind of throwing a backhand at them at the same time. So I think it's super interesting because, like I said, I didn't pick it up until this reread through that she is completely foreshadowing the end of the book, and also foreshadowing the fact that she is not one of the ones at the end of the book. Okay, so they are there to see the proof that Rhysand and the Night Court have brought as to Rhysand not being wholly bad, that there is some good in him, that there is peace somewhere in his land. That is the whole point of them coming back. Rhys has brought the Veritas, which is what they stole from Mor's family under the mountain. The Veritas is essentially a piece of truth magic, or is an object that uses truth magic. We don't get a ton of information on it. We do get some back and forth between the queens and different members of the Night Court, as well as Elaine and Nesda. More or less, it's, well, why is Feyre not enough to be able to tell you that Rhys has changed? Her previously being a human, becoming Fae, and now loving him, is that not enough proof? Is it not enough proof that Elaine still has a iron engagement ring? She is engaged to a Fae-hating human. Is it not enough that she's opened her house despite the possibility of her losing that engagement or them losing their social standings? And the Golden Queen says, well, I would say that's more proof of her idiocy to be engaged to a Fae-hating man and to risk the match by associating with you. Nesta, of course, jumps in and says, do not judge what you know nothing about. And the Golden One's response is, the Viper speaks again. And that's when she says, surely it would have been a wise move for her not to have been a part of this meeting. Feyre says, well, she's risking her neck to open up her house to us. She deserves to be a part of this meeting. Rhys nods to Mor to bring out the Veritas. And the whole time, Feyre is just kind of chanting in her head, don't do it, don't do it. This is a bad idea. It's not worth it. She and Rhys have kind of come to an understanding that they'll keep a part of their mental shield down for the other person to step in so that they're able to communicate mind to mind. So into her mind, he says, war is sacrifice. If we do not gamble Valaris, we risk losing Prithian and more. So he's just trying to tell her she has zero experience in war. He's been doing this for over 500 years, the cunning side of it, the calculating side. So he is saying that we have to do it because the end game is worth it. So Moore brings out the Veritas. She says in a voice that was both young and old. So we're seeing a little bit of her power, or to an extent, something in regards to her power in this scene. The gift of my first ancestor to our bloodline. Only a few times in the history of Prythian have we used it? Have we unleashed its truth upon the world? And Farah has actually described it being in the size of an apple, the Veritas, so it is very small, but that her body, Moore's body, is essentially made to fit the Veritas. She said she lifted the orb from its velvet nest. It was no larger than a ripe apple, and it fit within her cupped palms, as if her entire body, her entire being had been molded for it. Moore goes on to say, truth is deadly, truth is freedom, truth can break and mend and bind. The Veritas holds in it the truth of the world. I am the Morrigan. You know I speak the truth. And Farah mentions that her eyes were not wholly of the earth, and the hair rose on her arms. So I liken this to being very similar in Empire of Storms. Aelin has the amulet on, and they're in Skull's Bay, and she has the amulet, and she actually takes the goddess Deanna into herself accidentally because a door opens when she touches the power of the amulet, well, of the word key. And so I feel like this is kind of similar because we get a scene where Rowan is looking at Aelin. We get to kind of see through his eyes. And the picture that he paints of Aelin in that moment is that her eyes aren't of this world. Her voice is both young and old and also otherworldly. So it just, the wording makes me think that they're similar. Whether they are or not, I don't know. Does Moore have a goddess inside of her? I don't know. Probably not. But the wording just makes me think that the situations are similar. But this is one of the few times where we actually get to see Moore's power. And we've talked about it, not a whole lot. We'll probably talk about it more, that we don't get to see a lot of her power throughout the books, but that we know it is truth. We just don't know in like how, what, where, why. Truth. Like, what kind of magic is that? Other than being able to do something like this and say, this is truth because you know I am truth and I'm speaking the truth. Outside of that, I don't know how else her power works. So maybe we'll get more in the coming books. So the Veritas then essentially takes them over Valaris as if he were flying over it. And she mentions that I could have sworn that there was love in that image. I cannot explain how the Veritas conveyed it, but the colors, the light, what they conveyed, what the orb showed, somehow picked up whatever link it had to Reese's memories. So it's not just showing like a movie or a living painting, it is showing the feeling behind it as well. So Moore essentially says, this is truth, this is Valaris. And Reese tells him that this city has been hidden for 5,000 years. We've kept it secret, but now you know. I am who I am, and I've become the High Lord of Nightmares to protect Valaris and protect this secret. And that I let people see that reign of terror so that they don't look harder into what is in my territory to find this city. So the queens are utterly shocked because they don't have magic. So this entire scene is completely foreign to them. It's something new, but it also is shocking to see a city like this. We don't know if there are any cities like this on the continent because we don't know a whole lot of information on the continent because Feyre doesn't know. We don't know if they have something similar or if this is completely new. They say, we'll take this back to our sister queens and we'll discuss and then decide if we're going to bring you the book or not. And the Night Court, everybody kind of realizes that they're not going to give the book to them now. They're probably not going to give the book to them at all. And their response is, we need this alliance as much as you do. War is coming. It's inevitable. We don't have an option. If you delay, it only means more bloodshed. The ancient queen does bring up a letter that Rhys had written after all the other letters that he had sent. And she said, did you think we'd be moved by your letter, the love letter that you sent to us? And then she does read it out. And it's Rhys writing from the perspective of just a male in love with a woman who was once human, not writing to them as a High Lord, but essentially saying, help me, work with me, have an alliance with me so that I can protect the people that she loves and the people that she came from, because he loves her so much that he wants to do whatever he can to protect the people that she cares about for a better world, because it's all in regards to pushing for a better world. And the ancient queen then says, "Who is to say this is not all some grand manipulation?" And Moore is just outraged because she is truth. And the Golden Queen then chimes in and says, "A great many things have changed since your so-called friendships with our ancestors. Maybe your High Lord went into our brains and made us think that you were the Morgan and think that this is all true." So at this point, they're trying to come up with reasons not to help, not to move forward. They're just putting up wall after wall. Reese is silent through all of this, and we're going to find out why in a minute. And Nesda is obviously pissed off as well, tells them that they're mad women, arrogant, stupid fools. Elaine even says, give them the book so that they can help. And the eldest queen finally says no. The crone does say, the older queen says, well, maybe we can do an evacuation of this section of humans. And Nezra's response is, you would need 10,000 ships. You would need an armada. I have calculated the numbers, and if you are ready and for war, you will not send your ships to us. We are stranded. And the crone's response is, then I suggest you find yourself a winged man and ask him to fly you away. Nesta gets to a point where she comes really close to begging for their assistance. She says, please, please do not leave us to face this alone. And Feyre even calls out that I didn't think I'd ever heard that word from her mouth, but the eldest queen remains unmoved. Nesta is so worked up about this that tears of rage and despair from that fire that burned her so violently from within, when she finally notices at this point Cassian has walked up to her, he makes a vow to her. 500 years ago, I fought on battlefields not far from this house, actually. And I fought with humans and fairies, and I bled beside them. I will stand on that battlefield again, Nesda Archeron, to protect this house, your people. I can think of no better way to end my existence than to defend those who need it most. So it may not seem like a big deal, but this is a big deal for Nesda, for Cassian. We don't know that until Feyre looks to Moore and sees the shock on Moore's face, because I'm just like, okay, great. So you're vowing to help. You're already trying to help. This isn't a big deal. But then Feyre looks to Moore to gauge Moore's reaction and says her eyes were wide, not with jealousy or irritation, but something perhaps like awe. So she is completely shocked at the words that he's spoken to Neza, the vow that he's made. They don't say anything else to each other. Then the two queens rise. Moore asks if they can pay them any amount of money, and the Golden Queen says, we have all the riches that we need. We will now return to our palace and deliberate with our sisters. And they go because they're not going to talk more. Nothing you can say or do is going to convince them. So they leave. And everyone kind of starts to react, but Feyre looks to Rhysand and realizes that he is looking at the ground underneath the chair where the Golden Queen had sat. And at one point, she had dropped her handkerchief and bends down to pick it up, and her handkerchief is still there. Underneath the chair, underneath the handkerchief, is a box, and inside the box is the other half of the book. Beneath it, somehow hidden by her skirts, while she'd sat, was the box. And then Feyre hears it. The voice of the second and final piece of the book filled the room, saying to me, life and death and rebirth, sun and moon and dark, rot and bloom and bones. Hello, sweet thing. Hello, lady of night, princess of decay. Hello, fanged beast and trembling fawn. Love me, touch me, sing me. I love the words that it uses to describe Feyre. Like, what a perfect combination of words. Lady of Night, Princess of Decay, Fanged Beast, and Trembling Fawn. And it's just like both sides, all sides of Feyre, all in that one little sentence. She says, where the first half had been cunning, this box was chaos, disorder, lawlessness, joy, and despair. And there is a note from the golden haired queen, and it says, I read your letter about the woman you love. I believe you, and I believe in peace. I believe in a better world. If anyone asks, you stole this during the meeting. Don't trust the others. The sixth queen was not ill. So we finally find out what happened. Not necessarily what happened to the sixth queen. We learn that in the next book. But we find out that there is nothing wrong with her, that something has happened, and that's why she hasn't come to either meeting. Rhys looks to Nesda and Elaine and essentially says it is up to you on how much you want to know. It's up to you on what you want to do. He says, you've done the calculations, you've heard what the situation is. If you choose to remain, I'll have a unit of soldiers here all the time to help protect you. If you choose to leave, the city that we showed in the Veritas is welcome to you to live in for as long as you'd like. Nesda essentially looks to Elaine and says it's your choice. And Feyre mentions for her, for Elaine, Nesda would go to Prithian, even though Nesda has zero desire to go. Elaine says she can't because of her mate. So what she starts to say, Rhys cuts her off because he doesn't need an explanation. She says no, so he agrees. She doesn't need to give him an explanation. And so he leaves sentries who will remain unseen, unfelt. They'll look after themselves. Should you change your mind, they'll be waiting here at a certain time, and they'll take you back to the night court if you choose to leave. But I love that Nesda then turns to Feyre and says, that was why you painted stars on your drawer. Because we just figured out why she did. Rhys sent that image to her, and now Nesda, who knows nothing about any of this, has put the pieces together. Like, Nesda's brain is just incredible. That's why yeah, we'll get to that later. We give her so much grief, but at the same time, like, her brain is incredible. Okay, so they make it back to Valaris. They give Amren the second half of the book so that Amren can go back to decoding and trying to figure out what spell they need to nullify the cauldron. It's been at least 2 days. Amren still hasn't cracked it. Everyone's just kind of doing their own thing at this point. Feyre is not quite sure what to do because Rhys and Mor have gone to the Court of Nightmares. And so he is away. She doesn't have his companionship. So while he and Mor are gone, Cassian and Azriel come to stay in the house with her. And it cracks me up because they're such mother hens. It's adorable. They care about her, and it's not just because she's their High Lord's mate. Like, they actually care about her. They're there to spend time with her. They don't want her to be lonely. And they also saw how she was when she first got there, and they don't want her to get back to that point. So they're there to keep her company. And Feyre is excited. Oh, she's happy that they're there. But at the same time, she's like, I don't need sentries. So she and Rhys have their little messaging back and forth. And she says, how do I tell Cassian and Azriel I don't need them here to protect me? Company is fine, but I don't need sentries. And this is where we're seeing where Feyre is starting to learn the differences between being a member of the court and being the mate of the High Lord. Like, she's not at the same level as far as the hierarchy with Rhys yet, but she is at a point where she is his mate and they're going to treat her that way. And so Rhys's response is, you don't tell them. You set boundaries if they cross a line, but you are their friend and his mate. They will protect you on instinct. If you kick their butts out of the house, they'll just sit on the roof. Which cracks me up. If you kick them out of the house, they're just going to go sit on the roof. So no matter what, they're going to stay. And her response is, you Illyrian males are insufferable. And he says, good thing we make up for it with our impressive wingspans. Because we can't go an episode without talking about our impressive wingspans that we love from our 3 men. And of course, Feyre is missing him. So we get a little back and forth in regards to that. And Rhys is taunting her because it's not Rhysand if he doesn't taunt her a little bit on a daily basis. And then we get an afternoon where Cassian is keeping Feyre company. So they do actually go to a symphony. Feyre said it's kind of odd that the general of his armies is the one that she's going to a symphony with. But I think it's also really sweet that he's done that because it just shows the different levels of him and his personality. Feyre mentions that the music had been lovely, strange, but lovely. That Cassian had told her that the music was written at a time when humans had not even walked the earth. So we talked about this in book 1 when Feyre is in the study and sees the entire map and the different murals that talk about the birth of their world and that there is a time before the humans got there. And we talked about that we weren't sure if the humans just weren't included in that history lesson or if they actually weren't there yet. But we do get this little snippet from Cassian that this music was written before humans even walked this earth. That Cassian didn't really like the music, but she thought it was off kilter, but it entranced her. So they're walking back from the symphony. They do stop at the edge of the Sidra to look out over Valaris and enjoy themselves. Farah asks Cassian a couple of questions because she's a busybody. Initially, she says, "It meant a great deal to me what you promised my sister the other day." And Cassie's response is, "Well, I would have done it for anyone." And she says, "But it meant a lot to her too. Nesda is different from most people. She comes across as rigid and vicious, but I think it's a wall, a shield like the ones Reese has in his mind." And Cassian asks, "Against what?" And Farah says, "It's against feeling. I think Nesda feels everything, sees too much, sees and feels it all, and she burns with it. Keeping that wall up helps her from being overwhelmed, from caring too greatly," which is exactly how Nesda ends up describing herself as well. That it is because she feels and sees all or so much that she has to put up that wall, otherwise it will consume her. And she goes on to say she will never be like Moore. She will never love freely and gift it to everyone who crosses her path, but the few she does care for, I think Nesda would shred the world apart for them, shred herself apart for them. She and I have our issues. She will never forget that you offered to defend Elaine and her people. For as long as she lives, she will remember that kindness. And Cassian's response is, "Well, why are you telling me this?" And she starts to tell him, "I just thought you should know, so that if you talk to her again and she pisses you off, just remember not to get too pissed off with her," is what she's saying. But at that point, they can't continue their conversation because the Sidra below shifts and it kind of starts to roil, and they're not sure why. So they both start looking around to see if there is a threat somewhere, and they finally look to the sea because Farah can feel it. She can feel it in the water and is able to track that feeling out to the sea. And then they both look to the sea, and on the horizon is a smear of black, fast moving. It is not birds. There's no Illyrian patrol that knows about it. Cassian tries to say, "Okay, we got to go back to the townhouse so that we can figure out what it is." And at one point, Cassian reached for me, but I jumped back. Ice danced at my fingertips. Wind howled in my blood. I'd pick them off one by one. She's already decided whatever is coming, it is a threat, and she's going to fight to protect Valaris. Cassian tries to get her to go back to the townhouse. It gets to a point where he can't escort her back. He needs to actually go fight. So he hands her a sword and a dagger so that she is able to fight. And then he goes running off. And she thinks, they were flying. I could use my power to my advantage, freeze their wings, burn them, break them, even if there were so many of them. And it's as if they were carried on a fell wind. They get to them a lot faster than they anticipated. So Cassian does touch his siphons, and then armor kind of sprawls out all over his body with the other seven. All 7 of his siphons are on him. He does put up a shield, a red shield over the city. But as the beings flying come closer, they find out that they have gauntlets of bluish stone, the same bluish stone that had nullified Rhysand's powers. And so that stone broke and repelled magic. And so all of these beings that have the stone on their hands, they can start punching through the shield. And some of them are carrying Hybern soldiers as well. So it's a section of the army from Hybern that are flying in with additional soldiers. And Cassian continues to put up shield after shield to be able to protect the city, and the beings are able to just tear through each one. It's slow, but they are able to tear through each one. They both go to move in their separate directions, her back to the townhouse, Cassian to go warn Amryn and Azriel, and then they hear something. Blood shown on the white marble bridge, sparkling like rubies in the sun. There on those towering, elegant lampposts flanking the bridge, her body was bent, her back arched on the impact as if she were in the throes of passion. Her golden hair had been shorn to the skull, her golden eyes had been plucked out. So this is the golden queen who had brought them the second half of the book. The adder is the one who is leading this little army, and so he has thrown her on a lamppost, impaled her body, and then the adder hissed regards of the mortal queens and Jurian. So at that point, we know, 1, Jurian is already alive, or at least that's what that comment leads us to believe. And 2, the mortal queens and Hybern are working together, which is exactly what we thought. So then a battle begins, essentially. This is more of an annihilation, that the army has come in to try and wipe out Valaris because it is not as guarded, because no one has known about it in the past. I think it's really interesting because when the Golden Queen officially dies because she's not dead when she's thrown onto the lamppost, but she does die shortly after that. And Farah is running towards her, thinking if she can get to her fast enough, she can give her some of her blood and save her. But then her body slumped, and Farah thinks, and from wherever in me that power originated, I felt her death whisper past, which is interesting because Farah doesn't have death magic. So I'm assuming it just means the magic she uses to heal, that's the magic that recognizes that the queen has died? Or could it be something more? I don't know. A thunderous boom rocked the other side of the city. She goes down on the impact, blades flying, and then she scrambles back up. So she sees that Cassian and Azrael are both in the skies. We now have a blue and a red shield that are merging together. Where they merge, flesh and wings tore, bone melted, until hands encased in stone tumbled from the sky. So what Cassian and Azrael do is they realize that the hands with the blue stone on them, that's the reason they're able to break through the shields. So they actually take both of their shields and have them meet and essentially cut off some of those hands with the bluish metal so that they can't punch through their shields anymore, or at least some of them can't do it. At this point, Farah realizes that there are people all over the city screaming, specifically in the rainbow, that it was bathed in blood. The adder and his ilk had converged there, as if the queens had told him where to strike, where in Valaris would be the most defenseless, the beating heart of the city. She doesn't know where Rhysand is at this point. He had been in the Court of Nightmares. He does show up eventually, but he's not there yet. Across the river, thunder boomed again. Not Cassian or Azrael, but it's actually Amryn and her dark power. We don't find out what her power is. We do find out in the next chapter, but she is using her dark power to bring down groups, like large clusters of soldiers. And then Farah realizes that this is her home. These are my people. I'm going to defend them. And so she is heading to the Rainbow and the Artist Quarter. Since it is the most defenseless place, she is going there to defend. And she says, I became darkness and shadow and wind. So she winnows to the edge of the rainbow. And then she systematically starts taking out groups of soldiers. And I love all that she does to help take them out because she has learned some of the strengths that she has in her magic and she is using them to her advantage because this is this type of battle. In a organized battle, this tactic isn't going to work, which we're going to see in the third book. But right now it works because she has the space to do it. So what she ends up doing is, I do have it written down to mention that there is a young female, green-skinned and lithe, an ancient rusted piece of pipe that she has raised over her shoulder. She's standing her ground outside of her own storefront, and there are people inside, children and other people crouched inside the shop. So she is attempting to protect them, and Farah is stepping up to help protect her as well. So she slams her foot down in a mighty stomp, and as if in answer, the Sidra rose. So she brings the water from the river up, and she can feel the power thrumming in her bones and her blood and her breath. She became the Sidra, ancient and deep. I bent it to my will. So she ends up like reshaping and forming the water to be wolves. Wolves of water broke from behind me. The soldiers whirled, fleeing, but my wolves were faster. And so she uses the wolves to kind of run down the soldiers, shove water down their mouths so that they're actually choking while on land. Wolf after wolf roared out of the Sidra, as colossal as the one I had once killed, pouring into the streets, racing upward. So she's drawing from her pain and creating something better from it to be able to protect Valaris. Some of the soldiers realize that they're water wolves. They're on the ground. So they take to the skies trying to fly away. So Farah has her wolves grow wings and talons and become falcons and hawks and eagles. And they slam into the Hybern bodies. And at first, the soldiers who are airborne, they halt laughing and staring because they're like, oh, well, we just got rained on. That's it. It was just a bucket of water thrown on us. And then Farah lifts a hand skyward and clenched my fingers into a fist. The water soaking them, their wings, their armor, their faces turned to ice. Ice that was so cold it had existed before light, before the sun had warmed the earth. Ice of a land cloaked in winter. Ice from the parts of me that felt no mercy, no sympathy for what these creatures had done and were doing to my people. Frozen solid, dozens of winged soldiers fell to the earth as one and shattered upon the cobblestone. I'm going to point it out because she mentions ice of a land cloaked in winter, and we haven't actually seen a land cloaked in winter in either series so far. Like we get snow in Aurelia in Throne of Glass, and we get snow in Prithian, and we can assume that the Winter Court is icy and snowy because it's the Winter Court. I don't know. So I don't know if it's referencing the Winter Court or if it's referencing something else. And so Farah continues to use her wool, tearing and drowning and hunting. And then those who take to the skies, she freezes them so that they fall and shatter onto the ground until the screaming of my people stop. And the screams of the soldiers was a song in my blood. And she sees one soldier rising up above that has not been harmed and realizes that this is the adder. And she knows that he is trying to get back to Hybern because he has now seen all of the power she has wielded and is trying to get back to Hybern to tell them that it had chosen to come to lead for spite, and I had no doubt that the golden lioness queen had suffered at its hands, as Claire had. So she at this point decides she is going to kill the adder. She at least needs to attempt to bring it down. Rhysand has finally made it within range that he is talking to her mind to mind, asking where she is because he wants to protect her. She starts winnowing all around, grabbing all the ash arrows that she can find. She notices all of the ash arrows are coated in the greenish poison, the bloodbane that had also incapacitated Rhysand. So she responds to Rhysand saying, I am exactly where I need to be. And then she winnows into the sky. He is attempting to get her to stop because he needs to know where she is. He needs to know she's safe. She slams a mental shield of adamant up against the voice, against him, because she needs to be able to focus in this moment to get the adder. I could vaguely feel him pounding against that shield, roaring at it, but even he could not get in. And so in the distance, rushing towards her, towards Valaris, she can feel the mighty darkness of him that's devouring the world, and soldiers in its path did not emerge. And I love how she describes it. My mate, death incarnate, night triumphant. So Rhysand is flying over the city, coming to her, killing all the soldiers in his path, but she is focused on the adder, and the adder knows that she's coming after it. So he is flying for the sea to get to Hybern as quickly as possible. So she winnows, throwing my awareness toward it like a net, spearing mind to mind, using the tether like a rope, leading me through time and distance and wind. So Feyre's magic is tied to the High Lords of the different courts. But it makes me wonder if there's more to her magic, because we get this description of her winnowing to someone, and we get a similar description when she winnows to Rhysand, or she winnows to the place Rhysand's going to be. So is it that her magic can sense where that person is going to be, and that's how she's able to winnow there? Or is she able to essentially slow down time or be able to see a couple seconds into the future to know where that person is going to be to make sure she winnows there? I don't know, because it specifically says leading me through time and distance and wind. So I don't know if she has a little bit of time magic of some sort. But then it says, I latched on to the oily smear, pinpointing my being, my focus onto the core of it. When I emerged from wind and shadow, I was right atop it. So, like, she doesn't emerge right behind it, below it, in front of it. She emerges on top of it. And so if it's flying up, she's essentially emerging in front of it or where it's going to be. I don't know.
Do you think, going off what you're saying, when she's talking about Reese hiding in the pockets that he can make between worlds, do you think maybe it's something similar to that, but because of the amount of other High Lord's powers she has, like you're saying, maybe it is something additional, like something else merged, or maybe there's something in her blood from her mom, the mysterious ties that she has that maybe are helping her control time to where she has a foothold in the world, but can, like you said, speed up where she's at just enough,
Right? I
like
don't
an
know.
instinct. Because it
Yeah.
seems like it's an instinctual move to do it. It's not, hey, I had to learn to control this part of the power. Like, yeah, she could do the wolves and stuff,
Right.
but she played with the butterflies till she got bored. She could do the wings, but she did practice bringing them out the one. Those different things where with this, we never got mention of her playing with slowing down time, anything like that. So It's more that primal survival skill like her when she was a human.
Right, exactly. Then that's what I don't know if I'm reading more into it than what's actually there. Because it could just be because she's high fae and she can winnow. Maybe other people, no. I was going to say maybe other people would be able to see where you're going to winnow, but Lucian can't see that Feyre's going to winnow away from him a couple chapters ago. And Rhysand didn't know she was going to winnow in front of him when he's baiting her, but she knows where people are going to winnow. So that's where I don't know. I don't know.
Remind me. So when we were talking about their mom,
Yes.
what what was the theory behind that?
So the theory around the mom is that she is something, but we're not quite sure what. And the reasons we get that is she is kind of cold and distant to her offspring, similar to how witches in Throne of
Okay.
Glass are with their
That's what
offspring.
I was wondering. So whenever we were just talking about what was it? She was pulling the power. I guess it would have been the freezing. We were talking about we didn't know something snowy. I looked
Yes.
it up. Weren't they described?
Are they described as snowy?
I looked it up and hold on, let me go back. So it says whether the wastes were snowy depends on which specific region you were asking about, as the map of Aurelia divides. So the frozen wastes and then the western wastes, which weren't snowy.
Okay, so the frozen waste would be.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where we don't know because then, yeah, the frozen waste would be above, essentially at the same level as Terracin is, just on the other side of the continent.
I just thought that was worth mentioning.
No, I think and I thought about that, but I couldn't remember specifically because I remember the western waste, but I couldn't remember if there was any frozen part of them. And you're right, there is the frozen waste up above. So you're right. I don't know if it could be the ice, the land of cloaked in winter that she mentions could be the winter court, but it could also be because we're trying to connect the different worlds. It could be the frozen waste. And we do get talks in Terracin where there are sections that are mostly snow because that's where Caraver ends up being so that Lysandra can be with the snow leopards. So I don't know for sure because yeah, there's a fan theory that Feyre's mom, well that the Archeron mom is some sort of witch because the bed that they are born with, the only thing that comes with them from their first life to the rundown cottage is a bed made of ironwood, which is the wood that the witches used to make their brooms. So that's where there are a couple little hints like that.
What about go with me? This might be too far fetched because it's just going off what you guys are saying. I'm going with it. But Dorian could freeze things.
Yes.
Dorian and Manon, their bloodlines, as things continue down, could
So,
make up. I don't know. It
but
feels like a reach, but
yes, and this is why it's a reach because Dorian's magic isn't frost. It isn't ice. It isn't cold. Dorian's magic is what's the word?
undefined.
Yes, it is raw. That's what it is. He has raw magic. It just comes out initially as frost because of his mood in that moment. Outside of that, he has raw magic. So that's why he and Aelin are the only two that can handle the lock, is because
Because of the
hers,
power.
yes, his is strictly raw power. It's not specific to any element. It is just raw. That's how he can end up shape shifting, is because of his magic. So in that sense, it is super similar to what Feyre now has, which is something I never even thought of until we start talking about this now. What if she essentially has raw magic because she can turn it into whatever she wants? So what if Dorian is the ancestor for all of the Fae in Prythian, but each offspring of his only received part of his magic, and that's how it became specific to that court.
And what if maybe, like you're saying, in her bloodline, she had a little piece and the other 7 drops of blood basically took it from a hibernation state? Because by the
Right?
time she came into existence, her family did, it would be so diluted. But we know, spoiler for future books, we know down the line that her sisters both have some sort of innate power as well that comes forth, which makes me wonder how we're going to proceed those books talking on this now. Okay, my head's starting to hurt more, I should say.
I mean, and yeah.
Can it be October yet?
Right? Well, and even like when we get to Crescent City, there's even more that we're going to get from those books in regards to this world. So I can't say that we're going to get more information on Farah's power, but I think we're going to get more information in regards to Prithian that could give us some of these answers that we're theorizing about. We just don't know it yet. And we haven't put the pieces together yet. So we'll pause on our theorizing tonight and move
I
forward
feel like we
with
could
the
do that for another
chapters.
hour and a half.
Oh, hands down. Hands down. Okay. So Feyre ends up winnowing to the adder who is flying away. She does end up above him and comes crashing down onto him. So she kind of slams into him from above, plunging the poisoned ash arrows through each wing, right through the main muscle. She does wrap herself around the adder and becomes a living flame that burned everywhere I touched, became unbreakable as the adamant wall inside my mind. So not only does the adder now have poisonous ash arrows in its wings, but now he is completely wrapped up by Feyre and she is on fire trying to burn him as well. And they're free falling because he can't use his wings. She has essentially lamed him. So they are free falling down into the world, into blood and pain. The wind tore at us. The adder could not break free with the poison arrows skewering his wings, laming him, burning his skin. As they fell, she pulls out one of her daggers, and she notes that the darkness consuming the horizon shot closer as if spotting me. But she says, not yet. She's not ready. She needs to kill the adder first. So she angles her dagger over the adder's bony, elongated ribcage. This is for Rhys, and she stabs him once. I love that she does this 3 times because I feel like it's just taking us back to her final task and her having to kill 3 different fae. She stabs him 3 different times. The first is for Rhys, the second is for Claire, and then the third is for herself. And she slides her dagger in a 3rd time, relishing the splintering of bones and flesh. And at this point, they are like feet away from the ground, away from the cobblestone street. They have fallen so far. She stabbed him and burned him so much. He is bucking violently, trying to get away, but she's not letting go. Eventually, they get to a point where she can see their reflection in the blood on the cobblestones. They are that close to the ground. She winnows away and he slams into the cobblestones. Wind rippled the blood upon the cobblestones mere inches away, and I winnowed out, leaving the adder behind. I heard the crack and splatter even as I shifted through the world, propelled by my own power and the velocity of my plummet. So she emerges a couple feet away, but what she does is instead of falling down, she has now adjusted herself so she is falling forwards. So all of that momentum that she was going to hit the ground with and probably die is now moving her forward. And so she's essentially running then on the cobblestones, ends up slamming into a building because, I mean, obviously, at how fast she was plummeting. And she mentions the wave of darkness, Rhysand's power at last hit my side of the river. No one cried out as the star-flecked cascade of night cut off all light. So I think it's really interesting to mention that Rhysand's power is killing all of Hybern's soldiers, but it is not hurting, obviously, not hurting their actual people, and that the people aren't scared of it. They're not scared of him because he is not someone to fear, according to them, which is such a different perspective from how other people in Prithian view him. And then Rhys is there, violet eyes met mine. He leaned forward, his brow sweaty, coated, his breathing uneven, and gently kissed me, as if to remind us both who we were, what we were. And I love that she says, my icy heart thawed, the fire in my gut was soothed by a tendril of dark, and the water trickled out of my veins and back to the Sidra. So it's to the point where she has actually become her magic. She's become the different parts of it. Her body, and I don't know if it's the magic from each of those elements on its own or if it's that it's combined with the shapeshifting. And so because she can shapeshift, she's now shapeshift different parts of her into the other parts of the magic. And that's how she's kind of melded her magic together. I don't know, just the way it words that Rhys is trying to bring her back to herself, which is, again, really similar to what Rowan ends up having to do with Aelin when the goddess Deanna takes over her body. He has to bring her back to herself. And then Rhys calls her Feyre of Cursebreaker, Defender of the Rainbow, which I just love. I think that's beautiful. She is now the Defender of the Rainbow. Valaris is secure. The cauldron did break through the wards initially, but Rhys has repaired them afterwards. They've spent some time helping to clean up the city, heal the wounded, that kind of thing, make sure all the soldiers are gone. Now everyone is sprawled out in the living room of the townhouse. And this cracks me up because they just went through essentially a little battle. Cassian's face is battered and healing slowly enough that I knew he drained his power during those long minutes when he defended the city alone, but his hazel eyes still glowed with the embers of rage. Rhys is leaning against a mantle in the sitting room. She is near limp on the couch with more, both of them covered in dirt and blood, like everybody else. Amryn was hardly better off. The tiny female's gray clothes hung mostly in strips, her skin beneath pale as snow. Half asleep on the couch across from me, she leaned against Asriel, who kept casting alarmed glances at her, even as his own wounds leaked. So he's like sitting there bleeding himself while this like little monster is half asleep on his shoulder. And we get in chapters before that Amryn doesn't think that Asriel will ever trust her. And so I think it's amusing that that's the one that she's laying on, is the one that doesn't trust her. She does mention that Asriel's siphons and Cassian's siphons are muted, utterly empty. And she does find out, Rhys tells her Amryn's power, that it is a dark power, that she spun illusions straight into the soldiers' minds, that they believed they were drowning or that they were on fire or that their worst nightmares had come to get them, and they literally die of fright. So it's multiple different illusions that Amryn spins in their head to actually kill the soldier, and that she was able to kill them in great amount. Just goes to show how powerful Amryn really is. So Cassian says, Valaris is secure, but for how long? Hybern now knows about the place thanks to the Worm Queen. So I think it's interesting the way Sarah spells things that start with a W in both series, because the word keys and the word marks aren't spelled like word, W-O-R-D, they're spelled with a Y, W-Y-R-D. The Midgard worm is also spelled with a Y instead of an O. And now Cassian is saying the worm queens with a Y instead of an O, as if it's a curse, like he's cursing the queens. And it just makes me wonder why she uses that specific spelling for certain words. Maybe it's something, maybe it's not. I don't know. Maybe we'll get into that later on as far as the worms part of that. But it's interesting that it's only a few words that have the Y in it instead of the O. So then they decide that they are going to need to go to Hybern, and they're trying to decide who is going to stay back and defend the city when they do. So Amryn essentially says, if Rhys has to go to Hybern, then I'm the only one who might be able to hold the city long enough until help arrives. So she's volunteering herself to protect the city and stay back from Hybern. She says, today was a surprise and a bad one. When you leave, we'll be better prepared. New wards were built today. They will not fall so easily. And Moore says, so what do we do now? And Amryn's response is, we sleep and we eat. And Asriel adds, and then we retaliate. So they are planning their trip to Hybern. Rhys is brooding a little bit, because this is Rhysand. He made the decision to share Valaris with the queens. Because of that, the queens shared that information with Hybern, and because of that, Hybern came and attacked the city. So now Rhys is blaming himself for giving up Valaris and for all of the death that happened. So he is up on the roof. Feyre has gone to bed, realized he's not coming to bed. She goes up onto the roof as well to try and help him understand that it's not his fault, that you do have to make bad decisions. Sometimes they don't turn out the way you want them to. And Rhys's response, I don't know who I hate more, the queens, the king, or myself. But then he switches gears and he turns to Feyre and says, you shut me out. You shielded against me completely and I couldn't find a way in. And her immediate response is, I'm sorry. And Rhys laughs and is like, sorry? Be impressed. That shield, what you did to the adder, that you could have been killed, and yet you did it anyway, and you survived. You thrived through the whole experience. And Feyre's response is, well, are you going to scold me for it? And he says, no, how could I scold you for defending my people? I want to throttle you, yes, for not getting back to the townhouse and protecting yourself, but you chose to fight for them, for Valaris. And he says at the end, I don't deserve you. And he means it. And Farah's response is, we deserve each other and we deserve to be happy. So Amren the next afternoon finally cracks the code, has the spell to nullify the cauldron. She says, you must touch the cauldron and speak these words. And she had written them on a piece of paper. Rhys asks, do you know for certain? Amren says, I'm trying really hard not to be insulted right now. But I feel like at the same time, that's a little bit of foreshadowing because it doesn't go well when they go to Hybern. So is she right? We don't actually know. Moore asks, what would happen if you put both books together? And I think this is interesting because Amren says, don't do it. Obviously, she says, don't do it. And Rhys kind of gives her a look like, okay, but why? And she says, if you put the pieces together, the blast of power will be felt in every corner and hole in the earth. You wouldn't just attract the king of Hybern, you'll draw enemies far older and more wretched. Things that have long been asleep and should remain so. What does that mean? Because I feel like it's foreshadowing, but we haven't made it to a point where we see anything worse. So what is coming? Hopefully we find out in one of the books coming up. Okay, so then they go back and forth discussing Hybern and what to do, how to do it. They've been planning, they've been monitoring Hybern, trying to figure out one, where the cauldron is, two, what the soldier paths are when they rotate, all of that. They've been trying to figure it all out. So they've come to a conclusion. Moore and Rhys will winnow them off the coast, and then they fly the rest of the way while Rhys stays back. Because they know that Hybern has a track on Rhys's power or on Rhys's self. They're not quite sure. So they're saying that Rhys will winnow them in with Moore, and then they'll fly the rest of the way while Rhys stays back. They'll get in. Farah will nullify the cauldron, and then they'll leave. Hopefully it won't take too long, but while they're there, Azriel, Cassian, and Moore will take time to actually kill as many people as they can in retribution for the attack on Valaris. So Rhys turns to Farah and says, is this your choice? He's upset because he is going to have to stay outside while his mate goes inside, but this is the best plan to get the outcome that they're looking for. So Rhys says to Farah, if you want to go, then you go, Farah. And she says, if I hadn't already been in love with him, I might have loved him just for that, for not insisting I stay, even if it drove his instincts mad, for not locking me away in the aftermath of what had happened in Valaris. I realized how badly I'd been treated before, if my standards had become so low, if the freedom I'd been granted felt like a privilege and not an inherent right. Which I love because she now realizes that her expectations were so low that she's gotten to a place where even human decency was denied to her by Tamlin, and she is realizing truly to what extent. Rhys tells her, you might be my mate, but you remain your own person. You decide your fate. You chose yesterday. You choose every day forever. Period. And maybe he only understood because he too had been helpless and without choices, had been forced to do such horrible things and been locked up. I threaded my fingers through his and squeezed. Together we'd find our peace, our future. Together we'd fight for it. Let's go to Hybern. So about an hour later, she's halfway up the stairs when she doesn't know which bedroom to go to. So this is the first time they're back in the townhouse, and she's not sure if she should go to the room that she's been staying in or if she should go to Rhys's, or if they're going to have separate rooms like she did with Tamlin. So she finally gets up and to the hallway and goes to her room, and Rhys said he's already up there. He probably winnowed up there, knowing Rhys. And he's just leaning on a door. And he says, we can use your room if you'd like, but either your room or mine, we're sharing one from now on. Just tell me whether I should move my clothes or yours. It's all the same to me. And her response is, well, don't you want space? And he says, no, unless you do. But I need you protecting me from all of our enemies with your water wolves. So he's kind of throwing a little banter, a little teasing. And so her response is, well, your bed is bigger, so we'll go there. And that was that. Easy peasy. And Rhys pulls out his mother's ring that Feyre stole back from the Weaver for him. And this is where we find out that Rhys's mother gave it to him so that it reminded him that she was always with him, even during the worst of his training. And when I reached my maturity, she took it away. It was an heirloom of her family. So her family, so the Illyrian side, his Illyrian side, it's an heirloom of her family that had been passed down from female to female. So it makes me wonder, the Illyrians don't like they're women. All they're good for is breeding, according to them. So why is it that this Illyrian female has a ring that's been passed down from female to female? It just seems odd to me. I don't know anything about it. I haven't seen any other theories on it. It just, that's a lie. I have seen theories on it, but we can't talk about it yet. So it just makes me wonder, how did this ring get into an Illyrian family and get passed down from female to female? Weird. Just a little weird. And then Rhys mentions, that his sister hadn't been born. Otherwise, his mom would have kept it and given it to her. But before his sister was born, she gave it to the Weaver. And then she told me that if I were to marry or mate, then the female would either have to be smart or strong enough to get it back. If the female wasn't either of those things, then she wouldn't survive the marriage. So if she isn't able to get the ring back from the Weaver, she's not strong enough to survive a marriage with Rhysand. Not necessarily because of Rhysand, but just because of everything that comes with being his mate. So he
Which
says,
feels like foreshadowing too there.
right? Exactly. Like the mother knew something.
These moms,
Maybe she did.
they're shrouded in mystery.
Right? So he promises his mother that any potential bride or mate would have the test, and so it sat there for centuries. And so Feyre gets a little frustrated with him because that's, of course, her reaction. So she says, you said this was something of value. And he says, well, it is to me and my family. And she says, to my trip to the Weaver. And he says, well, it was vital that we learn you could detect those objects, but I picked the object out of pure selfishness. 2 birds, 1 stone, which is like all Rhysand is. 2 birds, 1 stone. He's going to get multiple things taken care of at once. And she says, so I won my wedding ring without even being asked if I wanted to marry you. And he says, perhaps. And then she asks if he wants her to wear it. And his response, of course, is, well, only if you want to wear it, because he's not going to push her into anything. And she says, when we go to Hybern, let's say things go badly. So I love this part because we start to see Feyre getting a mind, not for war and battle, but she's using some of her street smarts to try and figure out, okay, worst case scenario, when we go to Hybern, will they know that we are mated? Will they be able to sense it? Because she's trying to think of ahead of, if she wears the ring into Hybern and things go poorly, is wearing the ring either going to do good or bad things, either to her or to Rhysand? He says, if they can see us together and can scent us both, then they'll know, because now that they're mated, both of their scents have changed. They've mixed. They're intertwined. But if they're not together, then they might be able to hide it. She decides that right now she is not going to wear the ring. She says, after we nullify the cauldron, I want to do it all. I want to get the bond declared, get married, throw a stupid party, invite all of Valaris. I want to do it all, but not until we nullify the cauldron. Rhys's response is, and if I wanted to go one step beyond that. And that's where the chapter leads off. And it's actually where we're going to finish this episode, because next episode we get into Hybern, and we're going to try and put all of those chapters into one episode so you can finish things off in the next one. But we do get a little foreshadowing that Rhys wants to do one additional thing, a step further than being mated and being married. So we're going to find that out in our next episode. Oh my gosh, all of the theories that I just we need to be done with Crescent City at this point so we can talk about all the theories. And Nesda's book. We're at 16 total books for all of Sarah J. Maas World. And then we're getting 1 book this year, and then 1 book at the beginning of next year. And then we're getting another book as part of ACOTAR. That's the 4-part series. And then we're getting another Crescent City book. And that's just what she's told us so far that we're getting. So we're going to be at like 20 books plus.
I feel like 20, which I never want stories to end, of course, but I feel like 20 is a nice round,
It's a nice,
not too daunting number. It may only not be daunting because we've already read 13 of, well, technically 14 because I have read the first Crescent City already, but
she's not stopping.
I know.
She's not
but
stopping after we get to that. Oh no. I have a feeling, I mean, I think it depends on where she goes in the next ACOTAR book, because we're definitely getting a 4th Crescent City book that is named something Waters. So everyone thinks that that's going to be about the specific part of Crescent City that is the water people, the mer people. I can't
Okay.
remember what they're called.
But we get them a little bit in the first one, yeah.
Yes, you do. You do. And then you get a little bit more because I think Theron, I think you've met him in the first book. He's the merman. Yeah, he's with Bryce throughout most of the book. So you do get a little bit more information on the Water Queen and her daughter, but I think there is so much more. And some of the theories in regards to that really tie them to the Throne of Glass world that I'm just like, oh my gosh.
So are you
Like,
saying we need to have a couple theory episodes in between?
Like, we're going to have a whole theory episode when we get to the end of this set of books before we even get into the 2 new ones. But I'm going to tell you right now, when we finish the new ones next January, I will be surprised if you guys don't want to do a Throne of Glass. I really think we'll do Throne of Glass at that point.
Hopefully you guys get a kick out of this one. That's all for today's episode. We explored the theories, connected entirely too many dots, and probably created 3 new conspiracies along the way. Whether we're right or completely unhinged, only the next book can tell us. Until then, keep theorizing, keep rereading, and if a mysterious High Lord shows up offering adventure, maybe hear him out. We'll catch you next time. Bye, guys.
Yes, I love it. I loved it. Like, that is our new closer for the rest of all time.
Bar none.
That is our new closer.